Have you ever wondered how to get all the light and color that you see in real life into your paintings? I'm Allison Richter, I'm a wildlife artist, and I'm going to show you how through color glazing and dry brush. Alright, let's take a look at this wing that I've been working on. My setup includes my mixing tray, liquid, and I'm also using some thinner. So I'm going to mix this together to have some transparency or opacity, however you'd like to call it. I'm just going to put a little bit of liquid in. Be sure to wipe it all off, doesn't get clogged. I've got an area to wipe off my brushes. And then I have an assortment of brushes that I will be using with to apply the paint, and then I've got a fuzzy one for a dry brush. That's not the right brush. Don't play with the dog. Alright, so I've also got my paint that I keep in sealed containers. This helps them from drying out. I'm starting with an area that I've pre-highlighted. This is perfectly dry. So this is what you want. You want to be able to paint on top of any highlights or any colors that you've previously put on there, and I like to have them dry. Here's an example of an area that I've already done. You can see many layers of the color glazing. I have not put any color glazing on the background. I want this area to recede. Next, let's take a look at the colors. I'm just going to put a tiny bit on my brush. This is about how much I like to mix in. Here you can see a little bit of the liquid in the mixing tray that I'm using. I'm just going to keep working on this with the different layers of liquid and different colors, as well as some turpentine, until I get a bit of the opacity that I want. So I don't want it to be really thick. I want to be able to place this on the canvas where it's really kind of just a tint of color on top. Make sure you check your brush. It can get a little bit clumpy. I tend to wipe this off often. So here I'm just going to mix in a little tiny bit of thinner. This is just to make sure that it goes on thin enough that I can see through the color, but I can still see the color that I've mixed. Be sure to wipe off your brush. Every time you mix it, you can get too much on there and it gets caught around the bottom, and I really don't like that. It makes too much of a mess. So now I'm just going to roll it back on the brush and make sure that I have enough on there to start with. Let's take a look at the wing. I'm going with my pre-dried section. I'm going to make a shadow underneath it. And then I've also got these highlights in this top area that I want to paint over as well. Alright, so again, just a little bit of opacity. I want to show you guys that it's not a thick layer of paint. This you really want to be able to see through. First, just paint it on in the areas that it wants to go on. So here I'm painting it over the highlights, and I'm also going to create the shadow. It might take a minute to go on. Kind of gauge, do you have enough paint? Do you need to make it a little thinner? And then just continue to put it in the areas that you would like. So the brushes that I had been using were meant to apply the paint. Next, let's go through the brushes that are the dry brushes. These are the ones that I tend to use. No liquid, no turpentine or any kind of medium, and we're going to be wiping as we go. Alright, let's check it out. So this is the area that I just applied that paint. It has not dried, and I'm going to go in with a dry brush. I'm just kind of buffing the area. Since it's a shadow, I don't want it to go out too far. I just want a little bit. So I'm kind of melting it into that area that's right below it, and then I'm going to stop. And if you notice, you might get some streaks as you're going. It just happens to be when you're putting a darker color on top, this might happen. I'm also going to wipe the areas that have the highlights because I don't want it to be too thick. So after I get this done, I'm going to go back and see what's on my brush right now. It's a little bit of that brown color. I'm going to go back through and I'm going to wipe that off the end of my paintbrush. Alright, so I'm going to wipe a little bit, make sure that it's getting dry again. You want to try to keep it as dry as you can. If it's getting too loaded up with the paint you just wiped, just continue to wipe. See how it's starting to get a little bit whiter on the end of the paper towel? So just go ahead and fix that before you put it back on there. Now I'm going to go back into those areas that were a little streaky, because that I still want to blend back in. I don't want any streaks, and I want to clean up any of the paint that I had put on there that was not exactly where I wanted it to go. So just push it back in. I'm going to keep working on that shadow. Keep in mind you can go back in as many times as you want. So next I'm going to use a new brush. I'm going to create a new color. I'm still going to create something that is thin enough so that when I apply it over the top of the paint, I can still see the layers of paint underneath. So this is what I'm doing right now. I'm just mixing in liquid, and I'm mixing in a little bit of turpentine until I get it thin enough that I feel comfortable with it. If you need to practice it, you can always practice on a side sheet. Alright, so now I'm just applying it to the area that I want to cover. And the reason that I'm going over this so many times is I first put down a layer of like a highlight, and then after that I put many layers of blue. And then this way I can still see the highlights that I put on top. But if you've ever noticed, when you try to take maybe a darker blue and you want it to have a highlight, if you mix white into it, it's just going to turn into like a baby blue kind of color. But if I put the highlights on it and I let them dry, and then I apply the darker blue paint over the top, then it looks perfectly fine. And that's how I get that light. That's how I get that color to pop on it. So you can put as many layers as you're comfortable putting. Also, another trick that you can use is if you dip a plain brush into turpentine and then use a cleanup, you'll see me doing this here a couple times here and there, then anywhere you did not want that layer of color, you can wipe it right back off before it dries. So now I'm going to buff it out a little bit more. Every time that I'm wiping with my brushes that I have that are my dry brushes, I'm going to wipe it off in between, because you never want to let it get just saturated. The more saturated it gets, the more you're not able to take back off. So it's just a process. Layer it on with the color that you want, that you've created with that opacity or that transparency. Clean it up any places that you need to clean it up with the turpentine, buff it out, and that's it. You can also start trying to layer different colors together. Maybe you want a particular turquoise or a purple or something that you think maybe doesn't exist. So remember earlier when I was outside and I said, do you want to capture that light? Do you want to capture that glow that comes through? So when you're looking up maybe through leaves or through grass or through feathers, think about how that light is coming through the different layers of colors, how many different things that it's passing through, and you're not limited to just using one color or one layer. You can do as many as you want to. So think about as sunlight or whatever type of light that you would like to come through, whether it's moonlight or whether it's a light bulb, whatever type of light is coming through the pieces within your painting, you can add as many different colors and as many different highlights. A lot of times I'll go through and I'll paint a layer of highlights, and then I'll go through and I'll glaze it a few times and let it dry in between. If you try to paint on top, it's just going to come right back off. So let this dry, and then I might go through and put another layer of highlights, but just in certain areas. Maybe I wanted those to still come out, but I didn't want those to come out everywhere. So I'll go back through, I'll add new highlights, I'll let those dry, and then I'll put on new layers of color. You guys let me know in the comments if you've tried it, if you have any questions, or if there's another topic you'd like to see. So that's it. It's a good technique to use. You can use as many layers as you want. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Put them in the comments below. If you're interested in signing up for my Collector Circle emails, the link's in the description, so that you get a deeper look into my thoughts and my process. And it's a way to say thank you for being a collector. You'll also get first access to any new art drops. Anything to say? Okay. Thanks so much. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.